Hey, what's up guys, it's Shamrocked here. I just wanted to create a quick guide for 11.2. This is more like a first look than a guide. If I have time when the season comes out, I'll maybe do a little bit something more in depth. But for now, this is really just for anybody who's like kind of curious about what's happening going into the new patch and what Resto Shaman is going to look like. Please keep in mind, most of my content is for Mythic Plus, so a lot of this stuff is geared towards that. That's not to say it won't be true for Raid, but I'm not coming from a Raid background with this kind of stuff, and none of my testing has been in Raid, so everything I'm saying is once again to do with Mythic Plus. If you're looking for like good Raid intel, your best bet is to wait for Thune's Wowhead guide to be updated. That will give you some good advice there, and I'm sure the Icy Veins guide as well will also have some good intel for Raid. So before we get into it, for anybody new to my channel, maybe you haven't seen any of my dungeon guides before, any of my other expansion guides that I made for this expansion. My name is Shamrocked. I mostly push Mythic Plus. I do Raid as well, but I don't take it that seriously. But I do take Mythic Plus pretty seriously. I've gotten several titles at this point. I'm currently rank 1 in North America, rank 2 in the world. I don't know, that might change by the time we finish the season, but yeah, so I do like to think that I know at least a little bit what I'm talking about. So if you're looking for somebody whose opinion you can kind of trust for Mythic Plus, I would say I'm at least one of the voices you can. So hopefully the information in this video will help you out. But I do say it comes from a place of somebody who really likes to play Resto Shaman and who plays it regardless of whether or not it's meta, and who likes to have fun with it in all the new dungeons and content. So as a first look, I think Restoration Shaman is looking extremely strong going into this season. For Mythic Plus, it is at least as strong as it is for this current season, Season 2, which is very strong in my opinion. And it's only going to be getting a little bit stronger from what I can see going into the next season. The tier bonuses for both Farseer and Totemic are pretty substantial. I don't have a number for you in terms of like what percentage increase they are, but I can tell you that they, in terms of like the flavor and the playstyle, both of them feel great. And in terms of the power that they're adding and the I don't know, I like to think of it as like the ability that they're giving you in order to like save your group and really contribute to what is difficult in Mythic Plus. I think both of these tier sets do a really good job. They do have their strengths and weaknesses, so I don't know if at this point I can really recommend one tier set over the other. And there are also a little bit of like, there are a few caveats that I will say as well as we kind of go into each one that sort of might make things change as the patch launches and as like, things get changed and things get tuned and all that. So first let's talk about Totemic. So Totemic has been the go-to hero tree for probably the entire expansion so far for both Raid and Mythic Plus. That's not to say you can't do content with Farseer, but the vast majority of shamans play Totemic, and that is the majority of like the super high-end content for both Raid and Mythic Plus are pushed on Totemic. Now, first question that you might have is that going to change going into the next patch? In my opinion, as it is right now, no. I do think Totemic is still, at least for Mythic Plus, what you're going to be seeing in terms of like the shaman meta and like what the highest like the hardest content that can be pushed. I think it still will be done in Totemic. I could be wrong, but I will give you the reasons why I think so. And the first caveat I'm going to give here is that currently the way the tier set works on the PTR for Totemic, it's actually bugged in more than one ways that really benefit the tier set in the way it works. I'm not going to go into like the specific details of what these bugs are, only because like if anybody's watching this video, a month down the road when these things have been fixed, I just don't even want them to be addressed in the video. But all I'll say is that they do add quite a bit of power to the tier set. So currently as it is right now, the burst healing that you can get with Totemic, as well as the extra downpour afforded by the tier set, is it's pretty crazy. And let me just back up a second. So the tier set bonus for Totemic for Restoration Shaman going into Season 3, the 2 set bonus is after you consume all of your Totemic Surging Totem moats, which is your earth, your water, and your air moat. You cast a downpour at 200% effectiveness at your Surging Totem's location. So basically you just get a free downpour that automatically casts at extra effectiveness. And then the Forset is every time you consume a downpour, so this includes the tier set one as well as the one that you can just like cast natty, your chain heal, healing wave, or healing surge casts again, like the next one you cast, at 150% effectiveness. So it's pretty strong. You're basically getting a lot of free casts. What I think in my experience with Mythic Plus is like the really strong part about this tier set, like with or without the bugs, is that the Totemic cycle, the Surging Totem cycle, is on a 24-second timer, right? So every 24 seconds you can put down a Surging Totem, it refreshes your moats, you get a new downpour, you get a new Earth Surge window, and this season you would get new insurance buffs as well, but that won't be next season. But anyway, so like think about your rotation, if you will. Your bursts of power are going to be on a 24-second rotation, 24-second timer, whatever you want to call it. All right, so what's really strong about this tier set is you're getting a free downpour at 200% effectiveness, as well as 2 free either chain heals or healing surges or healing waves, also at 150% effectiveness, all within that 24-second window. And then you can like redo it every 24 seconds, which is pretty crazy. In addition to that, because of the way Totemic works, and because of how this tier set works in the sense that you kind of choose when you want to activate your free downpour, and by consequence also your Forset and your free casts, as well as like the manual downpour that you can cast, you can also control that. You can basically control when you want to activate your tier bonus and these extra powerful casts at any point during that 24-second window. Additionally, right now, this is another thing that may change, but I don't think it will. It may change in some respects, but I think the general idea of this is not going to change. The chain heal that gets activated, like the duplicated chain heal that's activated by your Forset, is affected by High Tide right now, which is pretty crazy because you're getting 150% effective chain heal on the entire group with High Tide. Like that doesn't fall off or anything, so it's just like a really, really strong heal, and it's automatic, right? It's an instant duplicated cast. So yeah, just the way, like I want you to get creative with your brain and just think about the ways that you can game a free massive cast for chain heal to be like a group heal, and then also for healing surge or healing wave to be like a tank heal, or like a way to just save somebody at like 5% HP or whatever. It's pretty crazy. And this comes from like someone, like I said, who plays Mythic Plus. It's a little bit different from Raid in the sense that like for Raid, you're kind of like going for the greatest number. You want to be able to do the most amount of healing in the least amount of time. Especially with just like the way that healing works now. For Mythic Plus, it's not like that. For Mythic Plus, your goal is not to do any number at all. Your goal is to just keep your group alive. And so this tier set, I think, is actually one of my favorite iterations since I've started playing this game, in terms of the freedom that it gives you to like game how you want to heal your group and when you want to heal your group, and just being able to plan for like different boss damage mechanics, or like from pull to pull. Being able to really choose when you activate these bonuses, I think is really cool. So anyways, to sum all of that up, I think the Totemic tier set is extremely strong, bugged or not bugged. We'll see how they tune it, a few weeks into the patch. But as it is right now for Mythic Plus, the freedom that you have to activate the tier set and game it and how you can use it, there's just so many possibilities. And I think that's like so important for Mythic Plus. I think that's what makes a strong Mythic Plus class and spec, regardless of healer, damage, or whatever, is things that have lots of options that are powerful, right? So yeah, I think Totemic is in a really good spot going into next season. And don't forget that one of Shaman's biggest strengths on the high end of Mythic Plus is that we offer Ancestral Vigor, which is a 10% health increase on the entire group with every heal, and also with Downpour, which is 10%. So when you have both Downpour and Vigor, you're giving your group a little bit over 20% HP. And in addition to that, the tier set is giving you a second Downpour that you can like activate whenever you want. So it's just a really, really strong tool. In terms of like what you're losing by not gaming the tier set. And what I mean by that is like, if you kind of just ignore the tier set and play as you will, you're still going to like get a lot of power from it. Like just by chance, a lot of the free casts are going to heal your group when you need them to. So I think it's a really cool tier set for people who play on the higher end. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of freedom with what you can do with it. It opens up a lot of options for how you can heal things. And in addition to that, it actually will help with mana a little bit as well, because like all of these extra casts are free. But also in the mid level of play, you can kind of just ignore the tier set and it's still going to do a lot of work for you. So for those reasons, I think Totemic is an extremely strong hero spec. As it has been, it will continue to be going into the next season. Okay, now let's talk about Farseer. So Farseer has definitely been the least played hero tree for Restoration Shaman since the expansion came out. I actually played Farseer quite a bit in Season 1. I was very much an avid Farseer player. I did the majority of my title keys in Farseer, I believe. However, realistically, it's never been as strong as Totemic. Even when I liked it and I was playing it, Totemic was still the stronger play and also the easier play. And I'll get into like easier versus harder at the end of the video. But anyway, so Farseer for Season 1, I couldn't play it for Season 2. I felt it was way too clunky, and I'll explain why in a minute. But going into Season 3, it feels a lot better to play. And there are a few reasons for that. First, the power level has been increased. So talking about the actual set bonuses, the two-piece for the tier set makes Ancestral Swiftness summon an empowered ancestor for 15 seconds that does 10% increased damage and healing. So the 10% increased damage and healing is kind of whatever, that's like negligent. But the fact that you're getting an extra ancestor for 15 seconds, in addition to the normal ancestor it summons, and in addition to the ancestor you're summoning with Unleashed Life if you're playing that, you have windows where you have three ancestors for about 10 seconds and 2 ancestors for 15 seconds. So that is quite a bit of power that you're adding to yourself for a 15-second window. The 4-piece, every time you cast Ancestral Swiftness, you reduce the cast time of your spells by 25%, the mana cost of your spells by 25%, and you increase the recharge rate of Lava Burst and Riptide by 50% for 8 seconds. So, putting that all together, when you cast Ancestral Swiftness, you are extremely powerful for 10 seconds, and you are extremely fast. Like, you basically have like a mini Lust every 30 seconds when you use that ability. After that 10 seconds is up, you still have 2 ancestors, one of them empowered for another 5 seconds, and then you're back down to 1 ancestor on your Unleashed Life cooldown. So if you think of it like compared to Totemic, for Farseer, you have every 30 seconds, you're extremely powerful for 10 seconds, pretty powerful for another 5, and then you're like back to your normal power for 15 seconds until your Ancestral Swiftness is back off of cooldown. For Totemic, you are strong every 24 seconds, and you can choose when you are strongest within those 24 seconds. So because of that, I still think Totemic is going to be it's going to offer more options for you. It's going to be the one that is like going to allow you to do more, and it's going to be quote unquote easier to play. And once again, I will talk about easier versus harder later on. But going back to Farseer specifically, the problems with Farseer in Season 1 and Season 2, more so in Season 2, are the sort of ability bloat that it feels. Especially if you're playing Unleashed Life to summon ancestors, it just feels very clunky. So Season 1 wasn't so bad because the tier set at that time increased the effectiveness of tidal waves, which in turn increased the speed of some of your spells. So it wasn't like the ability bloat didn't feel that bad. Season 2, there was no benefits like to haste other than like if you just stacked haste in your gear. So that clunkiness was like very apparent. And I mean, that's just in my personal opinion. But then going into this season, the tier bonus that increases the haste of your spells by 25%, pretty incredible. It definitely makes Farseer feel the way I think it was meant to feel from the get-go. That's not to say it gets rid of all the clunkiness. There still is a lot of buttons that you're going to be pressing. And we'll also talk about damage later on. But yeah, in terms of like fixing the issues that Farseer initially had, I think this tier set definitely accomplishes that, which is pretty cool. Okay, talking about like Farseer versus Totemic in general, and like easy versus hard. So you've heard my sort of breakdown of both of these. Totemic is going to be very strong, as I mentioned. Farseer is also going to be very strong. Your HPS that you can crank out when you have 3 ancestors going is pretty crazy, and the DPS you can crank out is pretty crazy as well. The problem for Farseer still, in my opinion, and in like my testing, is that there's still like a window, like I said, that 15-second window after all of your ancestors are gone and you only have the one from Unleashed Life, where you're kind of like a sitting duck, like you don't have a lot of heals. So that's just something to be wary of. Whereas Totemic, you're always strong. There's not really any moments where you like don't have healing for Totemic, and that's kind of mostly how it's been throughout the whole expansion as well. For easier versus hard, I think people think Totemic is easier because it seems like the rotation is easy and there's a lot of like passive healing. However, I can tell you on like the high end of play, it doesn't really matter, because like you're literally pressing, you're using globals you're thinking about every single global you do, no matter what spec you're playing at the higher level. It doesn't matter. So it's not a matter of like easy versus hard in terms of what you're playing. Also for Farseer, although the quote unquote rotation is maybe a little bit more complicated, in my mind and in my experience, anybody can learn a rotation. Like that's not the hard part of the game, right? Like everybody can learn and pretty quickly and adapt to like the order of what buttons you press, or like the situation that you press certain buttons. So sure, the learning curve for Farseer might be a little bit harder, but I think once you get the rotation down and know when to press your abilities, in terms of what to press and when, Farseer and Totemic, the one's not harder than the other. I think what makes Farseer harder, and what has made it harder throughout this whole expansion, is the fact that it is just a little bit less powerful, and so it's more punishing in the sense that you really have to think about what you're casting and when you're casting it, and you have to set yourself up for success, because any small slip can make the difference, and like your group is dead, or you fall behind and whatever. Whereas Totemic is a lot more forgiving, because it has more power inherently in it. So you have a little bit more room to make mistakes, because you can like really juice up your heals and you can catch up quicker, and you have things that are in your back pocket that you can sort of use to really just like make up for the mistakes that you could be making. So I think that's a good way to put it. I think throughout this expansion, Totemic has been a little bit more forgiving, and Farseer has been more punishing. And I think that's inherently because Farseer has been a little bit less powerful in pretty much all forms of content. So going into this new season with these new tier sets, now that they're much more even in power, I don't necessarily think one is necessarily going to be harder than the other. I think they're very equal. Once again, I do think Farseer has maybe a steeper learning curve because there's more buttons, and the concept of like your ancestors is pretty difficult. And that's from a general playing sense. I actually think now, given the way the tier set for Totemic works with your moats, and maybe having to hold moats in order to like really game your tier set, I actually think this might have flipped, and Totemic now might be like the quote unquote more punishing / harder one on the higher end, because like you really need to think about things. Whereas Farseer, you're kind of just like doing what you've always been doing. If you've already been playing Farseer, like the way you play it has not changed. So yeah, I think that's, and I'm kind of like getting into the weeds here. I don't know if you guys even care about this stuff, but I think it's a really interesting discussion to have. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see like what happens as tuning goes on, and as the expansion rolls out, and we see what this first month looks like for both Raid and Mythic Plus. For anybody, too long didn't read, just wants a short summary of that, both of these hero trees are extremely strong. You're going to have fun with both of them. You are going to be able to do the content you want to do with both of them. My only thing that I like don't know, and I'm not able to call at this point, is which one is going to be more meta for both Raid and Mythic Plus. And by meta, I mean like which one you're going to play to do like the absolute highest content. My guess would still be Totemic, once again, because of, like I said, the options it gives you and the downpour. But I think Farseer makes a really strong case for also being in that position, so we'll see. The last thing I'll talk about before we end is damage. So Totemic, the damage style and profile and whatever has not changed at all. You're going to be doing very consistent, very mid damage, your prio damage is going to be almost non-existent. Most of your damage just comes from your acid rain and your chain lightnings, and then your random lava burst that you use mostly just for keeping Master of the Elements stacks up. So has that been a problem this season so far, or this expansion? No, not at all. Totemic has been extremely strong even with a mid damage profile, so I don't think that's necessarily going to change. Now, I could be wrong here because we could be going into a season where healer damage really matters. We won't know that for a while. There's going to be a lot of dungeon tuning going out. Right now it doesn't seem like it's going to be an issue, but we'll see. Farseer damage. Farseer damage is really interesting because you can pump out it's probably one of the highest DPS healers at this point with this tier set, for sure, actually. I mean, I'm not sure, but I would be willing to bet that it is. The problem with Farseer is there's no really passive healing for Farseer. And I don't just mean passive healing by like healing you don't have to do yourself or like don't have to worry about. I just mean like none of the healing is like heal over time driven, or like there's no healing rain or healing stream totem. There's like, it's all active healing. It's all things that you have to press in order to make your group's HP bar go up in the moment. So, although you're really strong for DPS with the 3 ancestor windows and like the increased haste and the more lava burst, like recharge time is better. And like just the fact that ancestor chain lightnings are like insane because they're way overtuned by like fixes that Blizzard tried to do throughout this expansion. The problem with Farseer damage, that has been the case since the expansion started and will continue to be, it looks until the expansion ends, is that you cannot DPS while you heal. So on any pull or boss where you have to spend the majority of your globals healing, you are not going to be doing a lick of DPS, especially if you don't have acid rain talented. You're literally going to have pulls where you do like 0 DPS aside from like your flame shock and your lava burst procs. So just keep that in mind. And for mid-level playing, like mid keys, heroic rating, all that stuff, you have lots of time to DPS. The healing isn't that intense, so you can have a lot of fun with it. But I found doing like the harder keys on PTR, and I know this is going to translate to live too because it already exists in live if you're playing Farseer, on pulls or bosses where you need to really spend most of your globals on healing, which is a lot of the pulls and a lot of the bosses in higher end content. Yeah, you're just not going to be doing the DPS that you can be doing, which is just, it's not necessarily a problem. Like I said, if healer DPS doesn't matter, it's not going to matter. Like right now, Oracle Dispriest does like no damage at all, and they are meta. The problem for me is that it just feels bad. Like to know that you can be doing like 1 million DPS or 2 million DPS, but you're only doing 200k because like you have to spend so many globals on healing, it just feels bad. And I think that had there been a little bit more interest in Farseer from the devs' point of view, they easily could have rectified this by making some of the DPS for Farseer more passive, like maybe just making your ancestors fire off random DPS spells during their duration rather than you having to cast them. I think that would have really helped this problem. But they didn't do that, and that's not going to happen, so here we are. Just keep in mind, if you pick Farseer, sure, your damage potential is extremely high compared to other healers and compared to Totemic, but what you have to sacrifice in order to do DPS might end up killing your group, which is obviously not a worthy trade-off. But yeah, that's just my opinion on the DPS. And yeah, that's it. I just wanted to give you a quick overview from what I've like seen in my testing. I think the main point, the main takeaway from my testing in this video is that it's a lot of fun. Like both of these specs and the tier bonuses are a lot of fun, and they're both more viable now than they've ever been throughout this entire expansion. They're on the most even playing ground they've been on this whole expansion. So for any like hardcore Shaman fans who love playing both, or who just love playing Shaman in general, I think you're going to have a really good time this season with these tier sets. And I hope that is the case for the other classes too, because I have to give Blizzard some credit, like to take the initiative and the scary task of making a completely different tier set bonus for each and every hero tree is quite the undertaking. And I applaud them for even trying it. And I think that with the rest of Shaman, they've been extremely successful for both. So we are definitely on like the winning end of this. But anyways, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I will hopefully make more content going into next season. I can't promise anything, but you know me, if I'm able to make a guide to help you guys out, I certainly will. But yeah, until next time, thanks guys. I'll see you later.